What's going on, you guys? Back on track here with Chapter 9, Apostates, Rats, and Raven's Wings. Time passed, but who's to say how many times the hands rotated the clock, or the hourglass was flipped to reset the sands? Whether it had been a minute, hour, or a day, would it have made a difference? The earthquake could be felt all the way to the midline of the kingdoms, shaking the walls and rattling the windows of the Duchess's castle while frightening her son to tears as he shivered in her arms. It mellowed, and the brilliance of the crystal rose was diluted to a dimming gray that nearly camouflaged the paleness of the swords, shields, breastplates, and helmets that were now the belongings of ghosts. The sun wasn't there, for if it had stayed, it would have wept over the decimation. The only surviving structure, the last of Diamond's tenure, was the ornately decorated stone slab, standing weathered but firm. Its seal was broken, and door pushed aside, where, with one tentative foot in front of the other, the four inhabitants contained within crept out into their impoverished reality. As gasps of sorrow navigated the group while taking stock of their ruptured lives, young White asked simply and studiously, "What did this?" "Our parents," Red fielded apathetically from over her shoulder. "This is the wonderful difference they advocated to us." "But it's gone. Everything's gone," she escalated, blanketing the obvious in doubt. "But we're still here, my lady," the White Rabbit offered softly. "Ever the optimist, Rabbit. But what are the four of us supposed to do with this measly pile of ash?" Red responded, spurning his succor. "We're going to do what Father meant for us to. We'll rebuild it," White announced, coming forward and setting her sibling straight. From there, she was an oyster laboring to craft grains into pearls. She held the vorpal blade out in front of herself like a wand, and although its physical movement was kept minute, the magic coursing through it garnered a response. It laid the foundation where a dungeon was birthed, cell blocks, and a well-supplied scholar's study. Elegant staircases led to floor upon floor of maze-like hallways and rooms, grand halls and private quarters. Mountainous ramparts connected the lofty spires, while the courtyard could overlook the miles and miles of field. Dressed in white marble, the castle of Wonderland, the house of the throne, was resuscitated. Rather than commiserating, the three took to marveling at what she alone was able to do. The power it must have taken was the sort the bishop couldn't have taught her, and just for a moment he thought he saw the beautiful, more mature version of the queen. On top of all this, did she possess the means to advance her age into adulthood? A senile episode, as it was the child who requested his services. "Bishop, would you see to it, please, that this gets put in the armory?" "But this is your father's sword. Your sword, madam," he reminded with an initially patient chuckle. "And I've used it all I will," she stated in a pant, as her essence was in need of recharge. "I believe it would be better suited in the hands of a warrior, someone who will contribute to its reputation. But it's tradition. he advised more strongly. Don't be so disturbed about it, Bishop. There are plenty of others that will ensure the people recognize her as queen, Red interposed venomously. She has Mother's blessing around her neck, Father's crown on her head, his seat of power, this home, everything that was to be rightfully mine. Princess, please, he replied, reprimanding her passive-aggressive harassment. Princess? She huffed jokingly at the title. Yet further evidence that our parents left, making sure we knew which of us they favored and which they've thrown to the wolves. If you'll excuse me, Your Majesty. She curtsied satirically, intending to cast herself into the dark and cold, but was stopped dead, startled by an avian caw hailing from somewhere above them. What is it, Red? White asked, expressing concern for what had unsettled her sister so urgently. That raven, how long has it been there? She inquired without turning around, as if the slightest motion would draw the rascal closer. I can't say I noticed until now, but it's a carrion bird, my lady, no doubt scavenging a feast for itself. The bishop eventually retorted. Annoyed with his educating, Red shouted, I know what it is, teacher, but we've established there is no carrion here, and no bird I know feeds on iron or steel. She's right. It couldn't have come to eat, the rabbit supported, wrinkling his nose before continuing his opinion. It's a bit unusual, strange, the behavior. Excuse me. It's got to be the only trace of wildlife within 100 miles of this place, and maybe for quite some time, considering all this. Then why is it here? She growled through her clenched jaw, finally turning to engage the group eye to eye. A messenger, perhaps? White fluttered in, submitting her solution. Nothing carried in its beak, talons, or on its breast, the rabbit started reporting, hopping forward to investigate it more clearly through his monocle. It's no messenger, it's watching us. I think someone is spying, Red finalized, staring up at her growing conspiracy as it glided on alternating wings. Likely a fearful wonderlander, the rabbit added cheerfully. I imagine many more like it will be sent looking for some sign that the worst is past. No, that raven is from Blacksuit, she countered, deflating his theory and replacing it with her own. Ha! An outrageous insinuation, the bishop declared boisterously. It's a well-known fact that your aunt possessed the talent for employing birds for such tasks, yes, but I'm sorry to say, both she and your uncle were awaiting your parents' arrival in Wonderhaven, the rabbit relayed, interjecting a dose of sympathy into the otherwise coarse comment. But what if there weren't? She implanted further. Red, White sighed, disapproving of this defiance. No, White, listen. Red appealed frantically. There's no one here from Blacksuit to testify differently. Because no one from Blacksuit survived, she gingerly reinforced. We don't know that. The princess vociferated, igniting passions while continuing to build her case for her jury of peers. Their hopelessness is our assumption, based on the pretense that they've honored their commitment to Wonderland and perished in that duty. What are you getting at, dear? The rabbit wondered aloud, persuaded to listen. And do tread carefully, princess. The bishop followed with a stern warning. Red quickly spoke on, not wanting to squander the captivation she'd earned from her audience. Would it really be so unfathomable, given what we've learned about our family recently, to think that they've simply barricaded themselves out of reach and are waiting? That raven up there could be her view of the outside world, surveying the damage and confirming that her parents have truly suffered their fate. White, they could still be alive in there, alive when they don't deserve it. The forum concluded with her trailing off in a sorrowful tone and once again turning her back on the group. It took them a few steps, to register that they were being walked away from. She was leaving the same way she meant to earlier, before the raven. "Where are you going, Red?" White stammered, with concern when it occurred. "To get answers," she uttered lowly, in anger, purgatory. "Well, wait, I'll come with you," the queen called back, preparing to give chase after her sister to keep her from getting too far ahead. "No, child, no," the bishop prevented, seizing her arm with one hand and the retired vorpal blade in the other. "This is her business. We have our own to attend to." Chapter 10. Apostates, Rats, and Raven's Wings, Part 2. The bishop knew separating the girls at such a pivotal juncture was a mistake, but he committed himself to it through logical selfishness. He uncaged Red, released her into the world unrestrained and alone. The weeks it took, the mileage she covered on foot, gave her plenty of time, perhaps too much, to be seduced by the negativity of her thoughts and emotions. During the longest stretch of her journey, they sunk her as low as to contemplate killing her apostate relatives. She laughed at how the plan went together, how easily she herself made it out to be. After all, with her right there in front of them, where would they go? But then there was the issue of their chess piece night. In the halls she'd be forced to paint bloody red if they were in any way a hindrance, messier casualty of justice. Uninvited and unexpected, she burst through the doors of the Black Royalty's throne room, a perfect reflection of her inner turmoil. Alarmed, the King of Clubs sprang up from his chair, fumbling over the words to help him appear hospitable. "Red, what are you doing here? Thank the gods you're alive. Is your sister safe?" He waddled down to meet her in the center of the room, where, for his troubles, he walked straight into a punch, landing flush on the jaw. Though it wasn't strong enough to knock him to the floor, it certainly set him on his heels. "How dare you speak to me as though our lives are of any matter to you? Like we are family, you treacherous pig." Club nursed the rosy ache radiating up his cheek, panning over to his niece's physical condition until going rigid, tense with panic. Her straggly strands of hair masked her emerald windows, burning with malicious intent for this visit. She was dangerous. "Princess, I can't imagine what you must be feeling right now, how hard it's been to piece all of this together and make sense of it. But I don't appreciate being treated this way in my own palace," he said, wiping the trace of blood from the corner of his mouth. My respect is reserved for the nobility that resides here, not the weasels I've stumbled upon as substitutes," she insulted. "If I may explain," he attempted to engage unconfrontationally. "If there was even a drop swimming around in your veins, you would have chosen death," Red continued bitterly, purposely speaking over him. "You just need to understand," he tried again, keeping the same placid profile. "You allowed your own flesh and blood to be butchered by monsters. What is there to understand?" she snorted predatorily. "The difference between a good ruler and a great one," Club exclaimed, guaranteeing his would overpower and drown her voice. "And since your parents denied you the experience of ever being either, I suggest you learn it from me." His words did their job and diffused her immediately, but they also cut, and did so deeply. She looked to be on the verge of tears, and judging by the days-old dried smudges of makeup, it was a position she'd been reduced to quite frequently as of late. But with her pacified, Club returned to his serious but strangely inviting demeanor. "Walk with me, niece. There's something I'd like you to see." His audacity to not only ask but expect her to come closer to him changed her casual eye contact into a disdainful glare. Her verbal response was, "Where are your men?" said through occasional sniffles and a gnashed frown as she clenched the same fist she assaulted him with. "They're no farther than I need them to be, but they're where I've instructed. Come. I'd be more than happy to introduce you," he answered enigmatically, gesturing for her to lead. As she obeyed, stepping forward and beyond, Club shared a passing glance with the Queen of Spades, who was nervous, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of them going off unsupervised. Murdering the king somewhere within the confines of their one-on-one situation did cross Red's mind, but her curiosity prolonged it, wanting to hear what he had to say, see what he had to show. "Always remember, your father was a good man and an equally good king," he began, guiding her down a long, indiscriminate hallway. "There are many like him across the world that serve an important purpose, but they all have the same ingrained flaw. They're influenced by their emotions, often impulsive and irrational. They live to risk the security, prosperity, and longevity of everything they have in meeting their challenges head-on, actions that are perceived as heroic by the people. And so, they gift their love and loyalty, the true measure of their king's success. It's what makes men like your father missed, celebrated, and what turns them into the mythic legends from those stories of yours." Club paused at the end of the hall to present her with his courtyard, an open space walled in by columns. The air wasn't fresh, it was stale, stuffy, like a dungeon. He moved her on, bringing a square patch of black armor into focus. They walked along the outskirts of the formation, far enough away to avoid disturbing the concentration of the chess pieces, yet close enough to see their statuesque faces. Red was losing herself in memorizing the details, every scar and wrinkle, as he continued his lesson. "I view the politics very differently. I pride myself on being strategic, weighing the cost and benefit of the course before I dedicate to it. You think that what we've done is cowardice, but we had little option. Your father called on us to risk everything I've built in a war he waged against an enemy that wasn't ours. I refused, as did my men, because there's only one king they fight for, one home they defend, their own. It's the very same measure, just my own way of acquiring it. He put a hand out, indicating Red should stop, while he approached the line of knights and yelled to them in an official tone. What say you, gentlemen? Would you forfeit your life, should it surpass its usefulness or worth to either myself, your queen, or your kingdom? Yes, your blackness, they proclaimed in unison. And under this oath, are you prepared to repay Blacksuit for everything she's given you, whenever she dictates? He asked, searching for naysayers. Yes, your blackness, the collective repeated. Satiated by their devotion, he strafed a couple of steps to his left, taking notice of a young man visibly trembling at the end of the row. Clubb had little to no qualms about invading the boy's personal bubble, coming close enough to smell the beads of sweat raining down his forehead as he was interviewed. What do you have to confess, soldier? Are you afraid? Do you fear? Respectfully, sire, he replied honestly, forcing a poor excuse for a grin whilst he swallowed his heartbeat. Ah, there now. You see, Red, that's loyalty. That's power, her uncle informed, re-including her in his demonstration without shifting to look back at her. Instead, he remained fixed, dead-eyed on the boy as he again addressed the garrison as a whole. I hereby release you all from your service and will be collecting your debts. He dismissed himself, stranding the young knight and the others. He took an even number of strides, and half of an odd one, to Red before stopping. He extended his arm to his side, suspending it in a tease. He snapped his fingers, signaling the roars. The king's entertainment transpired through his niece's facial expressions. She had to cover her mouth when the screams rang out, so she wouldn't add to them. There was blood, rivers and pools of it. This was an execution. She nearly vomited in the palm that was tightly pressed against her orifice. No oxygen was getting in. She was suffocating, but she wasn't producing noise. She only vibrated and bobbled as she owled internally. Collapsing to her hands and knees is where things took a suspicious detour. Her hyperventilistic sobs sounded as though they had become jovial, building up to hysterical laughter. Those tears were now caused by a cackling fit, which started losing its steam at the same time as the genocide. Through her pants and the Jabberwocky's grunts of feeding, Clubb, who watched from beside her, could barely make out the words of her request. Teach me. That's going to wrap up this episode for us, guys. We did it. We fit 2 chapters into a single episode. High fives all around. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll be able to keep that train rolling with what I assume, hopefully, will be the next 2 episodes. So we'll see you then, guys. Take care.